Good evening and welcome to the Drive at 5 on intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station. I'm your host, Roman, and we have a terrific show planned for you today. Don't forget to stay tuned to intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station for Warriors Talk with my girl, Rochelle, at 6 p.m. Tonight, my guest is the supervisor for Legal Action Chicago. Now, this is very historic. The reason why is because ComEd, and as you know, has been following lawsuits and has been down the line for, should we say, decades? Decades, yes, for decades, and now we can proudly report that we actually won something. So, to tell us more about it is the supervisor, Dan Snyder. But before you get into the class action lawsuit, how it came about, please give intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station your background.
And thanks so much for having me on today. I am really excited to talk about this. So I have been in Chicago for about 8 years now. I've been practicing attorney the whole time I've lived here. I actually grew up in Milwaukee. Separated parents. One was an attorney. The other had a lot of really significant mental health issues. And it was helping my mom through those struggles and dealing with the loss of income, the poverty she experienced that really inspired me to dedicate my legal work to trying to help others in need, to try and use these incredible skills that I've been gifted by both my work, both my parents, by the universe, by the Lord, by all of these forces in my life to try and make everyone's life even just a little bit better. And so now I'm a supervisory attorney at Legal Action Chicago. We're an entity that does some work on class action lawsuits. Like you said, we also work on different policy initiatives in Springfield with the General Assembly and at the Chicago City Council. So I'm kind of like a Swiss Army lawyer, if you will.
Tell us about some of the other cases you were working on and the outcome.
Sure. We've got a few really interesting cases going on right now. One has to do with Cook County's property tax system. Everybody cares a lot about property taxes these days and every day. Really, any day of the week that ends in day. People probably caring about property taxes here in Cook, where we have some really high ones. We have a lawsuit going on specifically about the property tax sales system, the process by which Cook County will sell people's overdue property tax debt as a financial instrument. And then if people don't pay that debt back to these third-party financial speculators, people's homes will actually be taken from them. So we have a lawsuit going on against the county and Treasurer Maria Pappas right now related to that. And of course, we've also got some litigation going on right now about these low-income discount rates, which are just our effort to try and make energy and heating a little more affordable for people here in Chicago and Cook County and across the state of Illinois.
We'll get to the property taxes because some way somehow we talked offline, and I basically said the way they assess property taxes is borderline racial. I'm not saying you agree. However, it's like make it make sense that the Black community low on the totem pole when it comes to funding with schools, so forth and so on. And our taxes is no different than anybody else, and even higher in some neighborhoods. We'll get to that. So I'm going to put a pin to it.
All right.
What you're really here is about the lawsuit against ComEd. Now, refresh people's memory about the ComEd situation and how Legal Action Chicago got involved.
Absolutely. And to bring it back even a little more, because I think what's important for everyone to understand is these discounts that are now available apply to natural gas service. So if you're a People's Gas customer, you're a Nicor gas customer, a North Shore gas customer, you can take advantage of these discount rates right now. And next year, ComEd will have discount rates available too. But To take a step back and talk about where this came from, of course, we all know about the scandal ComEd was caught up in that resulted in the conviction of some of its senior executives, and the spillover effects of that and other scandals in the General Assembly that has led to the current situation where the former House Speaker is now going on trial, right? But a couple years ago, the General Assembly passed a law called the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. And the law had a lot of different components to it, some dealing with green energy, environmental issues that are important to me, but aren't so much what my organization work on. What the bill did have were a couple really key protections for low-income utility customers in Illinois. Some of these are still being worked out in regulations, protections, say, for low-income people that would no longer require them to provide a security deposit in certain situations, waiving late fees. But one of the key parts of this CEJA bill that was passed was an order to the Illinois Commerce Commission, the state agency that oversees public utilities, to study the issue of providing discount rates to people living in poverty. So CEJA passed, was signed into law by Governor Pritzker, and the Illinois Commerce Commission then did what it was told to. It did a study of the issue of discount rates, and the utilities filed comments, the Attorney General filed comments. My colleague, Karen Lusson at the National Consumer Law Center, working with Kofi, Community Organizing and Family Issue, commented on this, and everyone was arguing about, well, how big should these discount rates be? What features should they contain? A report was issued at the end of 2022 where the commission ordered the utilities with their next rate case filing, that is the next request they made to increase people's, gas and electricity rates, to include a discount rate proposal. So last year, myself, through Legal Action Chicago, Kofi, and NCLC, got involved in the first round of these proposals that were filed with the Illinois Commerce Commission by the big gas utilities, again, Peoples Gas, Nicor, North Shore, and can get into the nitty-gritty if you want, but the long and short of it is we won, and the commission adopted our favorable discount rates that for the first time in the state's history, the first time, will provide a really significant discount to people living at or below 300% of the poverty line, so long as people apply.
Tell me, how does that affect the Black community as a whole with this lawsuit?
So even though these discount rates are available to everybody, no matter your zip code, no matter who you are, it's fair to say that this represents the opportunity for a big benefit to people living in the Black community in Chicago. For better or worse, the reality is, we've all seen that map of Chicago. We've all seen that map of Cook County that tracks income inequality, that tracks inequality of opportunity in our city, in our county, in our state. And we know that disproportionately greater burdens are placed on the Black community in our city, in our county. One thing that can be done to provide a little bit of relief in this time of rising cost where wages haven't always risen to meet those costs is to offer people a discount. And that's exactly what these programs do. Provide people with a chance to get initially a discount on their gas bill up to 83% of their whole gas bill. And starting next year, a discount on their electricity bill, just to make life a little bit more affordable to families living around here.
How did ComEd and People's Energy get away with skyrocketing rates? Every single year, they will go up. Once upon a time, it was every single year. Then it was every other year. Now it's high, but it takes 3 or 4 years before they introduce another rate. How did you get them to negotiate no more hikes like this?
Well, short answer is we didn't. To start off with, these discount rates, People's Gas fought us every step of the way to get these rates approved. When the commission originally studied it, they wanted a very modest, narrow discount rate. When the commission ordered them to propose a more substantive discount rate, People's Gas proposed the weakest, thinnest, skimpiest discount they could think of. And when we, that being me at Legal Action Chicago and our partners at Kofi, the National Consumer Law Center, came in with a real substantive proposal for an effective discount rate, they fought that to the bitter end and still sought a big rate increase on top of it. So they didn't negotiate. They didn't agree to anything. We had to fight and win. And the reason companies like People's Gas, like ComEd, feel empowered to come back and ask for these rate increases year after year. If I was being generous to them,
To make up for the losses, or
they would certainly say it's to cover their financial expenses, to cover the increased costs of energy that they're just passing on to the consumer. Um, but we have to keep in mind these are public utilities that are guaranteed by law a profit margin of about 9% per year. Rain, shine, sleet, or hail, they will get a profit margin of 9%. If you want to know how they're able to get these rate increases after year, well, they've got really good lawyers working for them. Certainly worth every penny they pay them, and a much bigger team of lawyers than me at my legal nonprofit, even with my partners like NCLC, can muster up a team to fight against every single year, time after time.
grandma, grandpa, they own a home. Sometimes they cannot afford to heat up their own home or to cool their own home. You're saying the discount rate, and sometimes it looking at it, it depends on the income of the discount rate. Let's say people like grandmom and grandpa are living off their social security. How would that affect someone living on their social security?
Someone whose only source of income is Social Security, especially if they're in a multi-person household, they could be a good candidate for these discount rates, which again, they scale. It's 83% at the lowest end. The top tier is something like a 5% discount. There are also other options available too. There is the low income home energy assistance program, LIHEAP. It's available to people up to 200% of the poverty line, including people on Social Security. You combine that LIHEAP program with the discount rate program and a few other things out there like percentage of income payment plan programs. It's a little unwieldy, but it does create a suite of programs that help people like grandma and grandpa living on a fixed income to make it a little bit easier, if not fundamentally possible, to afford electricity, to afford natural gas service.
Let's say I'm getting assistance, public assistance. How would that benefit me to get a decent discount off of ComEd and People's Energy?
Kind of the same answer. Every dollar we have to put into keeping our house warm, making sure we have clean running water, making sure we have gas so we can use our stoves if you have a gas stove. Every dollar we have to spend on that is $1 less we can spend on that new pair of shoes for our kid on the first day of school, and school supplies, clothes for ourselves, for our kids. So I think someone living on government benefits, fixed income, any income, as long as you qualify for this program, can absolutely benefit, because every dollar we keep in somebody's pocket that they don't have to spend on heating their home, on paying for electricity or gas, is a dollar they can spend to secure themselves in some other area of their life.
CETA, the program starts October 1st. Today is the 7th. Let's say I applied for CETA. How can CETA get me those discounts? Or where do I need to go to apply to get those discounts? Is it once every year or every bill cycle to get those discounts?
So thankfully, people who apply now will be eligible for up to 2 years.
Are you talking about CETA?
For the low-income discounts that you can apply for through CETA, you mean the organization?
Correct, yes.
Right. So CETA is a community action agency. they're responsible for processing applications to this low income discount program and that federal LIHEAP program that can provide a direct benefit. So if you go in, you talk to a counselor there, they can submit the application on your behalf and they can collect all the information they need to make sure that you're qualified. Um, and if you're not sure whether you need to go to CETA specifically, there are other community action agencies out there. You can go to powerbilldiscount.com. That's powerbilldiscount.com and type in your home address, and you can figure out where the nearest community action agency is that you can go to apply for the discount rate for LIHEAP. And CETA transmits your information to the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. That's the state agency that oversees applications to these programs. And as long as the information checks out, people will be approved, the utilities will be notified, and your next bill should have a discount applied right on there.
And this is for 2 years.
And it should be for 2 years.
Anybody can apply for it, no matter if they have a decent income or low income.
There is an income limit up to 300% of the poverty line, which in Chicago for a family of 4 would be something like about $92,000 a year, give or take a couple thousand.
If you make above that, then you won't qualify for the discount, correct?
That's right.
Tell me about fighting with these utilities. You said earlier that they have some good lawyers.
Yes.
You had to negotiate. What point did you say, or your organization said, enough is enough? People are suffering, and this is the time of year that ComEd and People's Energy, they get real nasty and they start shutting people off this time of year. How did you say to them, okay, enough is enough? It's time for us to break it down by numbers, not by negotiations, but by numbers, in order to give people's relief and to keep their services on.
We were saying that from those must have been the first words that came out of our mouth as a part of these cases. And I take a lot of my moral inspiration from my colleague Karen Lusson at the National Consumer Law Center. She has been fighting these fights with these utilities for decades now. She used to be in the Attorney General's office under Lisa Madigan, then moved over to NCLC. And she is just a rock and a fighter and somebody who I trust innately and who from the very beginning, like me, was open, honest, and direct with the lawyers who work for these utilities. People need this relief. They need real relief, not just a $5 a month discount on their bill, not just a little bit here and there. They need a discount that will get them down to what is nationally considered the standard for energy affordability, which is you're not paying more than 3% of household income on your natural gas bill. And we had that argument out in front of the Illinois Commerce Commission. And the utilities fought it. Not every utility fought quite as hard as the others. Some, like People's Gas, they didn't really get the picture right away, but they all get it now.
It's not just People's Energy or ComEd. This goes for suburban nights as well, like Nightcore. And can you name the energy and throughout the Cook County area?
Yeah, so electricity, ComEd's the main game in town. For gas, and these gas discounts are available right now. You've got People's Gas in Chicago, Nicor and North Shore Gas Company in the suburbs. And then for much of the rest of Illinois, you folks are served by Ameren, Illinois.
Now, you talked about CETA, and when you apply for CETA, you talked about the steps and how they can get the discounts and how they can transfer the information. When it comes down to getting personal information and stuff like that, I know you're a lawyer. Some people are very leery nowadays because they be selling those type of information. What are your thoughts?
Bless you. I mean, I'm shocked. This is the first time hearing that lawyers aren't inherently trusted by the wider public. I can't believe it. Can you believe that? Um, I absolutely understand. You know, before I did this anti-poverty work, I actually worked at a different law firm that focused on consumer privacy. We did lawsuits under Illinois' Biometric Privacy Act, anti-robocalling lawsuits. I am as sensitive as anybody to the fact that there are scammers out there. There are people who will call you and try and get you to share your social security number on the phone. There are people who want to collect your information just to use it against you, to try and, defraud you out of money. CETA is not that agency. The community action agencies that process these lie heap applications, they aren't that agencies either. And I'm sure if you look at the whole history of all of these programs, you could probably find some bad actors in there. I don't know. But the bottom line is this: the people who staff these agencies, they're just doing a job and trying to get as many people as they can, as big of benefits as they can, to help people as much as they can. And that's the truth.
We talked earlier about this historic discount because it is historic. Why the major media outlets are not reporting on this? You mentioned news outlets like NPR, and that's about it. Crusader newspaper, that's about it. Now you're here on Intellectual Radio. Let's say I'm tuning in. What you want the masses of people who are listening and watching on intellectualradio.com to know about the utilities discount. And there is a spreadsheet to break it down, how they can get access to it, and how they can get the message out to others to apply for it.
And but I'll definitely share that. And a couple of places, like you said, they did pick up this story that these discount rates launched. It's disappointing to me. I used to be a reporter back before I became an attorney, and I understand the pressures of working in a modern newsroom. All right. This isn't a story that bleeds, so it doesn't lead. This is a story about people getting access to an historic benefits program. And it's disappointing to me that there hasn't been more coverage, but we move on and keep trying to do the work to help people. In the meantime, I would want to share these three things if I could leave the audience today with only three things. Number one, if you're already a customer on the low income home energy assistance program, LIHEAP, guess what? You're already on the discount rate program. Starting October 1st, about 300,000 or more households in Illinois automatically were enrolled in these gas discount rates. Number two, if you don't know where to go to bring your information to apply for these programs, again, go to powerbilldiscount.com. You can enter your address and figure out where your nearest community action agency is. For many people listening, that's probably going to be CETA. And number three, I would share this. These discounts are only going to be effective. People are only going to get help if they hear about them. So if you're listening now, spread the word. Tell your brother, tell your neighbor, tell someone at church, tell your coworker, because of the lack of media attention, other than from the folks at Intellectual Radio, the word, if unless we get the kind of attention that Intellectual Radio and one or two other outlets are providing to this, no one's ever going to hear these programs exist. And the biggest shame would be for people to miss out on accessing this historic program just because it didn't get picked up by the news.
Now let's go to property taxes.
Oh boy.
Over and over and over again, you have the Cook County assessors, you have Maria Pappas' office, you have multiple outlets that collect taxes and overseas taxes. For the life of me, I do not understand why they can't get it right of these taxes. They said the surveys. It wasn't the surveys. Now they're saying it was the equipment. Then they have the money for the equipment. Where did it go? The bills are not coming to consumers on time. And that right there is a big no no because each and every time an assessor bill is late, that wreaks havoc on the household. There are some people that believe that there's something fishy going on because this is going on like 8 years straight, maybe even more. Your thoughts?
One of the biggest poisons that can erode local government is a lack of trust. Because once that lack of trust gets in there and people no longer feel confident that they're being told the truth, that they're being treated fairly and equitably, how can we get anything else done? You see it today at every level of government. And I'll say on the property tax issue, because we do have an active lawsuit pending, that I am a little bit limited in terms of exactly how much I can say. But I will share this. Even if the assessor's valuations are accurate, and I do think that the assessor has done a much better job than, say, um, during the Joe Barrios era. And this is just me speaking personally, not on behalf of legal action. I'm just Dan Schneider, another citizen. But even if those assessments are more accurate, it does not mean that the distribution of tax burden, the overall income and property and other tax burden in this city, in this county, is being distributed equitably. That is, that communities are actually being asked to pay their fair share of the tax base. And I think it's fair to say that it is inequitable right now. I think it's fair to say there is racism in the current system. There is classism in the current system. And change has got to be made from the top down.
I know you're limited. However, what are your thoughts? Because you mentioned racism, I mentioned it earlier. How can we know from the jump? This is, I'll give you a prime example. ComEd has this energy efficient, tells you this is your neighbors, this is you, how much electricity you use, right? Why they don't do that with the assessor's office to know where the people are in their taxes? There are schools that are closing or closed already, and you're still paying school taxes. Can you make it make sense?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how much time we got. I think that would be a great idea. And there are ways someone, if you're enterprising, you could go online, say to the assessor's website, and you could look up your neighbor's assessments if you wanted to. But they should make that information immediately available to people. And I'll add this. In Cook County, there is a system in place that a person could challenge their property tax assessment, right? But who gets to do that? Not everybody, because not everybody gets access to a lawyer in this country. Not everybody gets an attorney who's going to go fight a case all the way up to the Board of Review and try and get their assessment brought down if they feel like it's unfair, which means the system is inherently a little unfair, doesn't it?
What are your thoughts on the Board of Review? Don't you think the Board of Review should go to these neighborhoods and say, hey, we're not attorneys, but we're here to make things right for you? Why they're not doing that?
It beats me. And I think that electing Fritz Kage was a great first step towards making the system more equitable because it was even worse 15 years ago. But the Board of Review hasn't caught up. If I had to speculate why folks on the Board of Review don't feel that they need to be accountable to the community in this way, right? I'd guess it's because for many people, they don't know who the Board of Review is. These are, for many, maybe not you and I, but for many people, kind of obscure county government offices. Maybe they read a news article about it. Maybe they have a family member who, had a property tax appeal. But other than that, they're not thinking about it in their day-to-day lives. They're thinking, how am I going to put food on the table? How am I going to get the kids to school? How am I going to get the kids back from school? And then after that, they just want to rest. They don't have time for all of that. And the people on the Board of Review understand that. People in many municipal government offices understand that unless there's a scandal, unless something bleeds so it leads, they can mostly operate in silence and in the shadows, and people generally won't notice what's going on until it's too late.
Craigie said, the head of the Cook County assessors basically said, we just basically messed up. We admit we messed up. We're going to have an internal investigation. I looked at my television set and I said, there we go. Here we go again. Somebody doing an internal investigation and it's only a slap on the wrist. Why no one says, if you're going to do an internal investigation, why won't you just do an investigation? If you're talking about your grandmom, your grandpa saving their homes, because if you look at the data, you go to Cook County, they don't have an escrow back in the day. Some of these houses are paid in full, and people are going downtown and saying, this person owes $10,000. They can't pay it on their Social Security. I'm going to pay it. I'm going to get the deed. Is that fair?
In no way, shape, or form is that fair. In fact, that's a lot of what the lawsuit we have going on against the county and the treasurer's office is about, the fact that there are far too many, hundreds, thousands of people who have lost homes worth $100,000 to $300,000 over a few grand in property taxes. Now, I think the county has the right to get its money. What's the saying? Taxes are the price of living in a free society. I do think that's true, but I also think that we shouldn't issue $100,000 punishments for a $500 offense. There should be some sense of proportionality in the fact that a person in this day and age could be forced out of their home, maybe one they've lived in their whole life, that they paid off free and clear, over a couple grand in property taxes without getting any compensation for that difference between the taxes and what the value of the home was. It's immoral. I think it's illegal. But at absolute
But in the
minimum, it's
state of
immoral.
Illinois, it's not illegal. Anybody, you can go down there and you see a $10,000 that hasn't been paid in 2 or 3 years. You can pay it, you get the deed. Should should that be some type of, without any type of notification of the homeowner, without anything, let's work something out from the city or the county. I don't get it. Should it be some type, you said yourself, it's illegal. I heard, and I'm third hand information, I heard that they don't even, when you ask for the tax roll, you don't even have to give an ID. And you can say, I want this home. You pay it, you can pay it to check. Once the check clears, you're in.
It's not quite how it works. And I think the part that is illegal is that, again, that's a situation where a home might be taken by one of these these third-party tax buyers when, the tax bill was five, even $10,000, and the home was worth one or $200,000, and they don't get that difference back, right? That 190 grand in surplus equity that they should get paid out. But at the same time, I think a whole lot can and needs to be done to better educate people about how the system works, and the system itself ought to be changed. It shouldn't be that people in this state can get rich off the misery of others in that way, which is the status quo. There's an auction that happens, the tax sale. One of these financiers, these tax buyers, can go buy just a couple $1,000s past due taxes, and then a couple years later, they get a whole house free and clear off of it. That makes no sense, and it hurts the public. It hurts public confidence in our tax system, but it just hurts. It hurts to see that this is still this decades-old system we're operating under with no meaningful benefit to the county. They couldn't get some other way. They couldn't get by enforcing people's tax bills some other way.
Just now opening up is the vacant lots for $1. Any neighborhood in Chicago and Cook County, here's $1, you get it. I've talked to several neighbors, and they're saying they are, how can I put this? You know how there's a major concert, let's say a Beyonce or something like that,
Sure.
and you're on the phone trying to get those tickets. You can't get on the phone. You know the time, can't get on the phone, but somebody outside the community gets the lot. What happened, or do you think it's time to have, if that lot is for $1, that neighbor on that block should have first right of refusal? Why we can't think logically on
First off, sounds like you really struggled to get some Beyonce tickets in the last year or
that?
two. I think I'm hearing something personal in there. I think honestly, I think that's a great idea, or something like it. It's anything that could make it easier for someone in the community who has the community's best interest at heart, not their pocketbook at heart. At least in principle, that's absolutely something I would support. That's absolutely something I think would help not just spur economic development in some neighborhoods, but would help keep communities together, which is itself, keeping communities together is itself an economic engine on its own, ensuring that families, people who have been in neighborhoods for generations, aren't suddenly forced to leave. I think that's a great idea. I think it's worth looking into.
Getting back to the CETA program and the ComEd situation, there are talks now due to the weather situation in regards to having utility poles underneath the ground. Is that going to raise up the prices? Whenever something happens, Mother Nature is not kind to anybody or nobody. She just has her own mind. What are your thoughts? Like that utility blown down, blah, blah, blah. It's time to raise it.
When I first started getting into this work, there was a real steep learning curve for me, because when you talk about public utilities, you're talking about an economic issue, you're talking about science, you're talking about and several different scientific disciplines, um, and it is incredible to me, even still, how much complexity is involved with the power line issue. A lot of experts do say that one of the things we have to consider to make our power grid more resilient, to avoid the effect of these, bigger and more frequent storms that we're experiencing around the country is to actually bury our power lines underground so that if there's a big gust of wind and a line's knocked over, you don't you're maybe not as susceptible to a blackout as you might otherwise be. And you could maybe save some cost on the back end once the lines are buried in terms of not having to fix them as often. Or if you do, you don't have to put someone up on a ladder and block off the whole area. You can just dig into the ground. But there's a cost with that. And I don't know all of the specifics of that aspect of the proposal, but I do know that a lot of people who are a lot smarter than me, and I think there's a couple of them out there, they're saying that this is something that we should do to make our grid more resilient. And I definitely think it has some merit on its face, even if there might be some associated cost with it. But make no mistake, utility companies will continue to come back and ask for more and more money time after time, as you pointed out right from the jump of this discussion, right? There will absolutely be times where they need that money to make updates to the grid, make updates to the gas pipeline system that runs under
But
Chicago.
don't you have your state representatives, your senators, state and federal? Could they help out with that? Why everything has to go to the consumer?
I think that the government absolutely should be playing a role. And I'm not an expert on the law, but I do think that there are some incentives that were created as a part of the Inflation Reduction Act, the climate bill that President Biden signed into law a couple of years ago, that will help to do some of these upgrades. There's also, funding for service line replacement that I think could be coming down the pike. But the bottom line is there will be times when the utilities ask for us to pay for something, and it's justified. But there will be just as many times where that genuine need to do capital expenditures to make these upgrades and investments will just be a fig leaf for an effort to take a few more of the marbles and get a little bigger slice of the profit pie.
Define legal action Chicago. You just don't fight for the little guy. You fight for the whole entire city and the county as well. How to right the wrongs and say that's not right, we ought to foul.
It's a multi-step process. Things come to us a few different ways. We only started about 4 or so years ago, and we're an offshoot of Legal Aid Chicago, which is the biggest provider of free civil legal services in the Midwest. But they do direct representation. An individual, one person comes in, says, "Hey, I'm getting evicted. I have this consumer issue. Can you help me out?" They help people out. We focus on class actions, cases like these utility cases that will affect thousands or millions of people, even if they're not a class action, and policy solutions. And we get our ideas from a mix of places. We get them from the practitioners at Legal Aid Chicago who are out there in the trenches helping people day after day, whether it's getting a restraining order or with a work visa or whatever the issue is. We hear from them the problems that their clients are experiencing. And, if we have the time, the resources, the budget, we try and put together a plan to fix it for everybody on a systemic level. We also get ideas from the community, from third-party organizations. I've already mentioned Kofi, Illinois Public Interest Research Group. It's another partner. Citizen Action Illinois is another one. We work closely with these organizations at the local and state level, sometimes even the national level, to try and see another part of the big picture that we might be missing. And if we think there's something we can contribute to, even something we can lead on, then we'll step up and do it if we can.
What is the equilibrium of a case that you have to satisfy for the public? We gave some examples, including the ComEd and the utilities discount. Other cases, such as, let's say, the city gets out of hand. We talked about the assessors. What is the equilibrium? Because they're not going to go away. They're not going to go away and say, forget him or forget them. They're not nothing. You say?
It really depends. And again, because we do have these active cases, I'm a little limited. But I'll say this: when you have a strong claim and righteous passion behind it, and you can prove to someone, I don't care if it's a local government official or the Cook County State's attorney or a private company, if you can show them, they're going to lose. Most people will eventually listen. They might not the first time, maybe not even the second time, but they'll listen the third time once you've shown them that the risk of not trying to resolve a case, sometimes even before the case is filed, the risk is just too great to them. But there is this kind of interesting dynamic when it comes to governments, especially, and utilities, right? Government's not going anywhere, at least I hope not. Even these public utilities, they're probably not going anywhere. There's this concept I only learned about a couple years ago in public policy called the infinite game. You ever heard of that? It's that idea that, when you're creating public policy, when you're engaged in these big battles, they're often not just like, a game of chess. You play and you get up from the board and you go your separate ways. It's about who won that day, that month, that year, but understanding that your relationships with all these actors and the existence of all these actors, they're going to continue year after year, decade after decade. And so as an advocate, that means it is important that you fight with righteous passion. It's important that you win real benefits for the people, but you do it in a way that acknowledges that you may have to, and likely will have to, sit across the table from some of these same people next month, next year, maybe even in 5 years. So
Don't burn that bridge.
don't burn that bridge. Winning is important, but how you win is also just as important.
Please give intellectualradio.com/iHeartRadio station how they can get in contact with you, a little bit more about the Legal Action Chicago, and how, again, the information regarding the utilities.
If you want to talk to me a little bit more, you have an issue you're seeing in your community you think might merit a policy solution, a lawsuit, send me an email. I'll respond to you directly. D Schneider, that's DSCHNEIDER, at legalactionchicago.org. You can go on our website. We have a contact form there. And if you just want to get right to it and learn more about how to apply for those discount rates, again, go to powerbilldiscount.com. The website's live right now.
All right. Don't be a stranger to the Drive at 5.
I won't. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. That's going to do it for us on this Monday evening. Thanks to Earl Winfrey, our executive producer, Wanda behind the scenes. And don't forget, on Saturday, the Austin community will have its resource fair at 5100 West Harrison. Please be there. And guess what? Legal Action Chicago will be there to hear you out. That's going to do it for us. You guys have a wonderful evening.